For decades, audiences around the world adored Bing Crosby and Bob Hope as one of Hollywood's most beloved duos. Their friendship seemed effortless, two legendary entertainers whose chemistry and comedic timing made moviegoers laugh, smile, and sing along. Together, they starred in the iconic Road to Crown film series, lighting up screens from the 1940s through the 1960s with their witty banter and musical charm. They were the kings of entertainment, a perfect partnership, or so it seemed. But behind the scenes, away from the cameras and the applause, there was a tension brewing between these two titans of show business. What the world didn't know then, and what's only come to light years later, is that Bing Crosby and Bob Hope's friendship was far more complicated than their films suggested. The truth is, Bing Crosby despised Bob Hope, and for reasons that were quietly hidden from the public for decades. To understand why, we have to go back to the beginning, to a time when both men were carving out their place in Hollywood. Bing Crosby, born Harry Lillis Crosby in 1903, was already on his way to becoming one of the most successful singers of the 20th century. His smooth baritone voice and laid-back style revolutionized popular music. He was calm, cool, and classy, the kind of performer who didn't need to try too hard to win over an audience. By the 1930s, Bing was not just a singer, he was a cultural icon. His records sold in the millions, and his film career flourished. Bob Hope, on the other hand, was a very different kind of entertainer. Born Leslie Towns Hope in 1903, he was a sharp-tongued comedian with a quick wit and a tireless energy. Bob made his name in vaudeville and radio, known for his rapid-fire jokes, self-deprecating humor, and charming arrogance. He thrived on laughter and attention, constantly in motion, always performing, always working. Where Bing was smooth and reserved, Bob was loud and competitive. Their personalities couldn't have been more different, and that difference became both the key to their success and the root of their hidden conflict. When they first teamed up for the 1940 film Road to Singapore, audiences were immediately hooked. The formula was perfect. Bing played the calm, handsome crooner, while Bob was the fast-talking schemer who always got himself into trouble. Their chemistry was electric, and the improvisational nature of their banter gave the films a freshness that moviegoers loved. Over the next 2 decades, they starred in several Road to Saudi films, Road to Zanzibar, Road to Morocco, Road to Utopia, and others, becoming one of the most famous comedy teams in film history. On screen, they were inseparable, laughing, joking, and teasing each other with brotherly affection. Off-screen, though, their relationship was far less affectionate. Bing and Bob respected each other professionally, but they didn't spend time together once the cameras stopped rolling. Bing was known for being private, serious, and sometimes cold. Bob, on the other hand, was constantly surrounded by people, always telling jokes, always performing. While Bing valued peace and solitude, Bob thrived on chaos and attention. According to those who worked with them, Bing found Bob's relentless humor exhausting. He didn't like how Bob always had to be the center of attention, even off set. Bing's style of humor was subtle and dry, while Bob's was brash and showy. Their comedic rivalry quickly turned personal. Bing began to see Bob as someone who couldn't turn it off, a man who didn't know when to stop performing. But that wasn't the only source of tension. One of the biggest reasons for Bing's growing resentment was jealousy and competition, not from Bing toward Bob, but the other way around. Although both men were stars, Bing was by far the bigger one. By the 1940s, Crosby was one of the highest-paid entertainers in the world. He had multiple hit records, an Academy Award for his role in Going My Way, 1944, and a level of respect that few entertainers could ever achieve. Bob Hope, while hugely successful, never quite reached that same level of critical acclaim. He was a brilliant entertainer, yes, but he was known primarily as a comedian, not an artist. Bob's humor was often built on ego. He liked to be seen as the best, the funniest, the most adored. And so, every time he and Bing shared the screen, Bob tried to upstage him. The friendly banter that audiences loved was often rooted in real rivalry. Many of their on-screen jokes about each other's fame, talent, and looks weren't just for laughs. They came from a place of truth. Bob envied Bing's natural charm and effortless cool, while Bing grew irritated with Bob's constant need to prove himself. Bing, who valued professionalism and control, began to despise what he saw as Bob's desperation for attention. He once reportedly told a friend that Bob couldn't take a breath without wondering who was watching. On set, their relationship became increasingly tense. While they never fought publicly, crew members later revealed that Bing would often retreat between takes, keeping to himself, while Bob kept cracking jokes, trying to win laughs from everyone around him. Bing found it childish and tiring. The tension wasn't just personal, it was also about money and credit. The road to my films were collaborative, but Bob always tried to claim more credit for their success. He would often imply in interviews that he made the duo funny, that Bing was simply the straight man. This didn't sit well with Crosby, who felt that his understated humor was what balanced the partnership. Without him, he believed, Bob's loud style would have fallen flat. The situation worsened as both men aged. By the 1950s and 60s, their careers began to move in different directions. Bing continued to make music and occasional films, while Bob became more of a political figure and television personality, known for his USO tours and his long association with American troops. Bob loved being in the spotlight and made sure everyone knew it. Bing, by contrast, preferred to fade quietly into semi-retirement, spending time with his family and focusing on golf, one of his lifelong passions. But even in their later years, their rivalry didn't fade. Bob would occasionally make jokes about Bing's stoicism or old-fashioned personality, while Bing privately rolled his eyes at Bob's ego. The truth, insiders say, is that Bing simply didn't like Bob as a person. He admired his work ethic, but found his constant need for attention unbearable. There was also resentment over how Bob used their partnership to boost his own fame. Yet, Bing was too professional and too smart to ever let that dislike show in public. He understood that their partnership was good business. As long as audiences believed they were best friends, the films would continue to succeed. And so, he smiled, sang, and joked his way through it, masking his true feelings with charm and professionalism. It wasn't until years later, after both men had passed away, that those close to them began to reveal just how strained their relationship really was. Friends and co-stars spoke about how Bing kept his distance from Bob, rarely socializing with him off camera. In interviews, Bing's children hinted that their father respected Bob, but didn't trust him. They described Bing as someone who valued loyalty and sincerity, two qualities he didn't see in Hope. The final blow to their already fragile friendship came during the last years of Bing's life. In the late 1970s, as Bing's health began to decline, Bob made several public comments that rubbed him the wrong way. At one point, Bob joked about Bing's age and declining popularity during a television special, a moment that reportedly angered Bing deeply. He felt humiliated, believing that Bob had crossed the line from friendly teasing to disrespect. When Bing Crosby passed away suddenly in 1977 while golfing in Spain, Bob Hope publicly expressed sorrow and admiration, calling him one of his greatest friends. But privately, those close to Bing claimed that he hadn't spoken warmly of Bob in years. In truth, their friendship had died long before Bing did. Bob Hope lived for another 26 years after Bing's death, continuing to perform well into his 90s. But even he couldn't escape the shadow of their complicated relationship. In his later interviews, Bob occasionally mentioned Bing, sometimes warmly, sometimes dismissively, as though unsure whether to honor his old partner or continue their lifelong competition. So what was the real reason Bing Crosby despised Bob Hope? It wasn't one single thing. It was a combination of ego, rivalry, and incompatible personalities. Bing was a perfectionist who valued sincerity, privacy, and control. Bob was a showman who thrived on attention, humor, and chaos. Their success together depended on that tension. But behind the laughter, there was little real friendship. Bing saw Bob as insincere, a man more interested in fame than art, more focused on applause than authenticity. In the end, the perfect duo that Hollywood celebrated was an illusion, one carefully maintained for cameras and contracts. Off-screen, Bing Crosby didn't see Bob Hope as a friend, but as a rival he tolerated. The tragedy is that their partnership, which brought joy to millions, was built on a foundation of resentment and competition. Yet, in a strange way, that tension may have been what made their chemistry so unforgettable. Their story is a reminder that Hollywood friendships aren't always what they appear to be. Behind every smile, every joke, and every glamorous partnership, there are egos, insecurities, and unspoken rivalries. Bing Crosby and Bob Hope may have made the world laugh together, but in truth, they spent much of their lives quietly at odds. Two giants who needed each other professionally, but could never truly be friends. And now, after years of speculation, the truth fin.